Hello, it is Josh Bloom of the very conveniently titled Josh Bloom Podcast. This podcast existed for decades. Before I came along, it was just silence. And then I arrived, I sat down, and well, here we are. This week's episode is going back to the long-form writing by which I started doing this thing. We will get back to ranting and ignoring the Trump administration, etc. quite soon. But for now, this is a piece I have been working on for quite some time. It took a lot of investigating and investigative reporting about myself and also observing other people around me and kind of taking notes of the different kind of anger and hatred that would arise within me about my fellow human beings. So this thing got so extensive that I split it up into two parts. The first part, which went out to my Substack subscribers yesterday who like to read, and if you are someone who likes to read, you can sign up at my Substack, which is superjews.substack.com. You can just get it right there in your inbox. And for now, this is the first part of this piece, which even has a kind of a cliffhanger. Isn't that exciting? The piece is called I Snuck in 10 Munchkins. You will understand what this means very soon. This is part 1. I Snuck in 10 Munchkins. Part 1. Examining Josh Bloom's antisocial behavior inside coffee shops and the hypocritical justification of this behavior through illustrating the bad behavior of others. Part 1 of 2. Lashing out is not a priority. Levity is. Everything you are about to hear is meant to make you laugh. While rooted in my reality, my sarcasm isn't nearly as important to me as empathy. We are all here for a short time after all. These are my actual behaviors in actual coffee shops. The full subtitle of this piece is Examining My Antisocial Behavior Inside Coffee Shops, the Hypocritical Justification of This Behavior Through Illustrating the Bad Behavior of Others, and How Illustrating the Bad Behavior of Others is also a hypocritical and antisocial behavior itself that I will further justify as self-preservation, education, and entertainment. If you're listening to this, don't worry. You're already perfect. I am describing people we should loathe, or at least pity. You may find that I am one of these people. I am discussing my behavior and how it varies by shop to indicate and illustrate how we can all benefit from being more mindful of altering our behavior based on the situations we are in, the company we are in, and in the case of coffee shops, the literal companies we are in. How we behave inside different coffee shops is a microcosm of how we can behave outside of different coffee shops. I find that many of my fellow citizens are becoming less and less self-aware and less prone to care how they act in public. Do you agree? If you are alive, then we are both living through the mid-2020s permutation of humanity's inability to know how to behave. In 2025, coffee shop culture presents a way to examine society that I can use to illustrate an opportunity, under the best circumstances, to recognize and hopefully influence our world's bad actors to act less bad. When I say less bad, I am graciously giving the benefit of the doubt to my fellow citizens who exhibit these behaviors because I believe they probably do not know, either consciously or subconsciously, that they are acting out of order as a vending machine that holds on to your already paid-for fried potatoes. And when I say mid-2020s permutation, I am acknowledging that this problem of disregard for our fellow man is a manufacturing error that has existed throughout human history. But this is the timeline we are living in, so I can only address it as it pertains to my current experience of existence. As you will discover here, this writing is also a thinly veiled means to absolve myself of being an antisocial, maybe even bordering on sociopathic person. By judging the behavior of my fellow citizens in what I describe as more horrendous than my own, some people may be right to claim whataboutism, i.e., so what if I did this, you did that? Again, the point here is to illustrate the shades of gray in bad behavior and how it can and should vary given the circumstances. How I roll inside these coffee shops demonstrates my willingness to break the social contract. I am tuned in to what I call the not caring culture, simply a catchy way to describe a hallmark of recorded human history. This concept is hardly novel, but before we get too dark too early, I must also acknowledge that I know that if not caring culture exists, then caring culture exists as well. Perhaps overly optimistically, I believe that caring is the standard and not caring is the deviation. But unfortunately, the deviations have more immediate and obvious consequences. One day, those who are cared for and their caregivers will more readily experience the benefits of their efforts. Caring is why I write about myself in this potentially negative light, instead of letting the angst brought about by the human condition manifest itself in ways that are even more antisocial than those described below. I hope you will feel the same kind of catharsis I do when writing these words. Slipping into cynicism, I encourage you to bask in the understanding that there are those walking among us who would never see what I am describing as anything even worth describing in the first place. This type of person is one who, when confronted with the evidence of their violation of social norms, will reflexively consider the validation of the violation a badge of honor. And they may add that anyone affected by these violations is too sensitive, or whatever degrading words spill out of their mouth in the moment. Unlike a non-sentient vending machine, however, these flesh machines can care, but do not, because not caring is a persona that some like to adopt as an identity and way of life. Maybe one day our driver's licenses, if a license to drive is still an institution that the powers that be agree is worthwhile or even allowed to be widely available, will have a checkbox for care or do not care. It is unlikely that a do not care checkbox person knows the word sociopathic, or if they do, what it means. These are people beyond the whataboutism freaks I mentioned earlier. These are people who may find the concept of using words instead of word-like grunts to be a bridge too far. Use your words is what we say to toddlers. These adult toddlers respond, no. Before we arrive at the theater of behavior examination and analysis in coffee shop culture, I will provide a foundation by contrasting the people inhabiting that world with some of my experiences of others who I perceive and believe fit into this category of callous person. I will tie what I am about to tell you back into the coffee shops momentarily, but here are some entertaining examples of the kinds of egregious behavior I see in the world to familiarize you and remind you of who I am talking about. This list came about when I started to jot down annoyances. I had become concerned that I might say the wrong thing to the wrong person under my breath and risk personal injury. Instead of doing that, I am saying it into this document, which I also feel may be a cathartic experience for others to read about who are similarly afflicted with this problem and aware of this concern. There are plenty of other, more general, simple examples that we all recognize and live with for me to give, such as those who choose to talk at movies, but we all know that one. Even the ones who talk at movies complain about the ones who talk at movies, you know? These examples, arranged alphabetically, are more specific to my particular mania, and as such, you may find that you are one of my people because you immediately recognize that you know these people. Cutting through parking lots. This behavior happens to be illegal and is an act that is compounded when performed by one of those trucks that are actually the size of a small building, because when the driver of this type of vehicle finishes breaking the law, they immediately take up half of the parking spot in front of them and half of the parking spot behind them too. Human garbage. Driving too fast in a public park. If you feel the need to drive very fast through a public park, I don't like you. What is the reason? Are you doing this to be intimidating and aggressive around people enjoying a park? Please crash. Electric scooters. People are now standing on these small, lightweight folding electric scooters that travel about 15 miles per hour and apparently don't have to abide by any rules of the road. These scooters and their operators are incredibly unstable. So as the rider motors along to the right and left of you, While you're driving a car, the chances of the scooter scumbag going down right into the path of your vehicle are quite high. I expect to hear something soon about people dying from that, and I don't mind. Hot coffee. This is absolutely insane. I order hot coffee, and the worker wants to hand me the cup instead of putting it down on the counter for me to pick up. The potential to spill hot coffee and burn myself because I am not used to the temperature that the worker has likely built up a tolerance to, or to drop the cup entirely, creating a mess and possibly burning someone else, is unimaginable. What is the reasoning behind this practice? It makes no sense. Not putting groceries back. I do not like it when someone takes a product off the grocery shelf, later decides they don't need it, and doesn't bother to put it back where they found it. In fact, I am holding English muffins in my hand right now while dictating this note, and I am putting them back correctly. I am clearly not a psycho. Out-of-turn stop sign etiquette. An inexplicable variant in the dickhead driver reality is when it comes to letting other drivers go through stop signs when it is not their turn to go. This situation relies on making eye contact, followed by giving a wave. I don't understand how this particular moment on the road is when people decide to be a good person by not adhering to the rules and therefore making themselves more of a bad person by creating a dangerous situation. The only explanation I can come up with is that it is a chance to seize power, i.e. the other driver is letting us go, which makes us subservient to them. Sick stuff. People who say good morning. I am annoyed by people who feel the need to say good morning to me at times when I don't feel like hearing good morning, because then I have to hear it, and then I feel obligated to say it. I also don't like people who say good morning enthusiastically to other people when I don't want to hear it, because it makes me feel like I am also being said good morning to, because the volume of their voice is so loud, or at least loud enough that I can hear it. That's too loud. Speed bumps. People who purposefully drive around speed bumps in the parking lot of the co-op apartments where I live pisses me off. The point of the speed bump is to slow you down so that you don't hurt people. At my place, when they drive around it, they actually drive into the fire lane. A few times, I've almost been hit by someone driving around the speed bump when I'm stepping off the sidewalk to cross over to where my car is parked. Unfortunately for me, this disgusting, selfish son of a bitch decides if I live or die based on the slightest inconvenience. Turn signals. There are those among us who drive vehicles, but refuse to allow others among us who also drive vehicles to know what they may or may not do with these vehicles. First among them are those who do not use a helpful tool provided by all car manufacturers. This tool is generally known as a turn signal. I am making lemonade out of this by using the reality that drivers like these will never let us know that they are about to make a turn as a means to strengthen my nerves, as I continue to accept that there will never come a time when people who behave this way will change. It is up to us, less trash-like motorists, to manage what the nearly literal litter inflicts on us. In the case of lethal weapons such as cars, we must be aware and adept at anticipating and averting. Unhygienic hygienist. Speaking of groceries, I saw a woman with a face tattoo at the grocery store checkout liberally spraying down the handle of a shopping cart she had already used during her entire shopping trip. Now, I am only pointing out that she had a face tattoo because taking tattoo needles to the face seems like more of a risky life decision than exposing yourself to the potential infection from a shopping cart that you have already been touching long enough to fill it. Either way, this situation is perplexing enough to be irritating. When wearing headphones. I'm a broken record about people who clearly see that I'm wearing headphones and so can't hear them, but try to get my attention anyway, as if what they have to ask me is more important than anything I am doing or have going on. Maybe I'm on the phone with a funeral home arranging the service for a dead friend. That doesn't matter to the person who wants to find out, what's the wireless password? Or is someone using this chair? Or what are you listening to? Honestly, I don't mind that last one, depending on whether I find you attractive. More honestly, this applies to the first two examples as well. Super honestly, this applies to everything I condemn in this entire article. Slipping back out of cynicism into altruism, let me reiterate that I'm providing these descriptions in contrast to my own candid confessions of adult toddlering, but also to educate and entertain. When we laugh at other people, this is also an antisocial, hypocritical act. But describing the social contract breaking acts of others for levity and solidarity is not as bad as the acts I am describing themselves. I am educating. They are denigrating. I am empathizing when I say that I am optimistic that every observation I make is of a person who doesn't think, or if I am being exceptionally generous, isn't aware that their behavior is the least bit problematic. I feel an air of confession building around my keyboard. Let's continue. First is the coffee shop closest to my home. This is a single location spot that I have seen expand over the years as it has become a social hub in my town. It went from serving the usual coffee and pastries to knocking down a wall and taking over the space next door in order to serve crepes and sandwiches, to buying the entire building and establishing an off-site roaster and brand with a total staff that I estimate at a couple dozen employees. Throughout these changes, though I have issues with how the prices have increased, the shop has maintained its small-town feel, even with the level of professionalism sometimes edging into what feels like a bit of a disconnect that is probably not noticeable to many, but as an OG and business person, I recognize it as a consequence of growth that is difficult to navigate. Without going into the incredible detail that would undermine my affection for the place, let's say that the top-down vibe suggests nothing about the joint is loosey-goosey and subject to rule-bending. Again, it is a challenging middle ground, coffee pun, to strike when the establishment is about gathering for coffee, and coffee culture is generally considered casual. I respect how this business is run like a tight ship, but sometimes a ship can be too damn tight. To this end, I would never, ever think of bringing food or drink from the outside into this coffee shop. In fact, there have been times when I don't want to even bring this shop's coffee into this coffee shop. Every coffee shop has a loyalty card type of system that will qualify customers for a free cup after a certain amount of purchases. Over the years, there was a suggestion that the free cup had to be equivalent to what the customer regularly purchases. There have been times when I qualified for a free coffee and felt weird about cashing my freebie in on anything but a small black cup because that's what I usually buy. To that end, the shop once refused to punch my coffee card after I purchased a large iced tea, more expensive than a small coffee. I never asked again. They also refused to allow the use of a gift card that they noted had expired, which means they were paid and never had to deliver the beverages. These incidents took place far in the past, so these policies may have evolved to add some flexibility. Update. On January 12th, 2025, I was told when trying to cash in a full loyalty card that normally I would not be able to get anything other than a regular drip coffee. They let me get a small almond milk mocha. Normally, I would have used the card to get a medium with an extra shot. I was too scared this time. Regardless of all of this, I guess the rules are the rules. To bend them then or now would be to break them. I snuck in 10 Munchkins. One morning recently, the nearby Dunkin' was offering a deal for 10 Munchkins, what Dunkin' calls donut holes, which I know because I'm basic, and if you don't, you're not. for just $2. I decided to buy them and sneak them into the coffee shop. I went as far as to grab an empty plastic bag that some hamburger buns that I already ate came in, so that if Duncan put the Munchkins in a conspicuous box, I could move them into the bag, which would be easier for me to hide. As it turns out, they were in a Duncan bag. But I moved them anyway, because the plastic bag would make less noise than the paper bag would when I fished a Munchkin out. Now look. There are people who would go into this coffee shop and not buy anything, and sit there for hours using the internet. But true to this coffee shop's nature, they require you to enter a code every hour to use the internet, and I have seen them confront patrons who tried to work without buying anything. These are the same patrons who come in the side door during the dead of winter and don't bother to close the door behind them. It is to the point where there seems to be a cadre of customers who have taken it upon themselves to perform this task, including me. There was also the day that a man at a table less than 3 feet away from me, who had to sit forward in his chair to accommodate his ample belly, said the words, "It's been almost 100 years. It didn't happen to you. Get over it," while discussing the Holocaust. I couldn't help myself and said, "My grandparents had to escape Poland to keep it from happening to them." This pissed him off. "Nobody's talking to you." I pretended not to hear him. People like this hate that. When he managed to lift himself from his seat, the person he was sitting with came over and apologized to me. I said, "For what?" as if I didn't know what she was talking about. Again, they hate that. I wouldn't absolve her from consorting with someone like this man. I may have snuck in 10 Munchkins, but I drank them with purchased coffee. I am not one of these inhuman humans. The next shop is about 9 miles from my home. This is a ridiculous amount of round-trip travel for some, and I haven't done it much these days because I am on a budget. Please like, comment, and subscribe. It helps. Unlike the shop near where I live, this one is in a less ethnically mixed town, more wealthy and white, which does contribute to the progressive vibe of the place because liberal people with money can spend more time focused on social issues because they need to offset their privilege and guilt. This shop is minority-owned, and most of its staff are LGBTQIA+ or allies. They display a trans pride flag, and as a minority, Jewish and gay, there is a certain comfort I take from this. This kind of public stance in a business as public as a coffee shop can be risky, and I admire these proprietors for taking it. They have a $1 refill policy on drip coffee that I didn't even know about, but a barista kindly filled me in on, another coffee pun, when I tried to order a second cup one day. They have an open mic night. There is a community vibe that is clearly important to the place as a guiding principle. There is a community table, where some ladies gather to knit, and some other ladies gather to write postcards before elections and express disgust after them. If there is a spot for rich people to encourage eating the richer, it is here. Across the street is a local deli, and just up the street is the local high school. I don't know if this happened organically, but when the school kids break for lunch, they all get food from the deli and bring it into the coffee shop to eat it. This is not only allowed, it seems to be the regular order of things. So regular that I know the hours where attempting a moment to think and write while trying to avoid gossiping high school kids is a futile endeavor. I do not have to sneak in Munchkins. I have brought in a vanilla cream donut from Dunkin', however, because the only Dunkin' shop that I can find this particular incredibly delicious donut is the one in the town where this coffee shop is. For anyone who wants to inconspicuously consume an outside donut at a coffee shop community table, which I am actually sitting at right now and about to do, I have a trick that I use to cleanly accomplish this. It's not like I am a messy person anyway, but donuts can go rogue when consumed, and in what can often amount to an elbow-to-elbow situation, a major unpredictable downside of the community table reality, this knowledge may be helpful to you. I tear the bag containing the donut from left to right, just above where the donut lays inside. Be sure to tear carefully, slowly, and methodically in a straight line, so as to be neat and not disturb the donut or attract unwanted attention. If done properly, this essentially creates a bag bowl to contain the donut and a receptacle for any cream, crumb, or powdered sugar. When finished, put the top of the torn bag inside the bowl to trap any spillage, crumple, and dispose. You're welcome. Some patrons of this shop act so out of pocket that when I see the obnoxious car that one of them drives in the parking lot, I have to contend with a physical cringe. This particular person has been acknowledged by the staff as awful. The many conversations I have had to overhear and endure have only strengthened my agreement with this assessment. He made contact with me one day because I was wearing a ball cap with a logo that you would have to be a touch in the know to recognize. I thought we could be friends, but he immediately wanted to assert that he knew more than I did, which he didn't. Like, not even close. Whenever he sees me with the hat on since, he has nothing to say to me other than something related to the hat. Don't you hate that? Empathy over sarcasm. I said it, I mean it. I have only thought about keying this person's likely just south of $100,000 car as a way of relieving my tortured mind as I hear him go on and on and on about whatever subject, usually politics, which is fine, but it is always in this righteous tone that says, "This is not a discussion, this is a speech." He feels like filling the shop's air with. His rhetoric is for everyone, whether you like it or not. His chat partner has inspired me to write all sorts of things over the years. I have actually heard her monumentally loud and obnoxious laugh through the glass as I approach the building. Lashing out is not a priority. Levity is. I said it, I mean it. I love laughter. It is the most important part of life to me. In my darkest moments, I find things to laugh about. Hearty laughs, absurd laughs. This is not that. The chat partner's laughter is a disturbing cackle that either comes from a place of deep insecurity, a deep need to be noticed, or a combination of both. I am good with being called out as projecting these feelings, and I will go ahead and say that it may be true, but we are talking about behavior here. Even if I am the insecure and attention-seeking one in this discussion, my current behavior does not reflect this. At the moment, these two people are disturbing the peace, and they are more horrible than me. Epilogue. I became so irritated by this woman that, like her chat partner who coveted my hat, I tried to befriend her. It wasn't even awkward, but my impressions were confirmed in the exchange. I have tried to make eye contact and say hello using her name ever since. This has helped little, but I feel good about contributing to the common good in this way. At this point, you might say, "But Josh, I don't know any of these places. I can't fully relate to what you're saying." Stay tuned for part 2, where I will actually name some names when some corporate monoliths come into the equation. You won't want to miss it. Hey, it's Josh. I hope you enjoyed that, and don't think I'm a monster. Again, I'm just trying to make you laugh, but in the moment when I'm writing this stuff, boy, I am sure worked up. You might be able to tell. So there will be a part 2. It's already written. It's already done. I know what it says, and you will know what it says soon, too, if you sign up to my newsletter at superjews.substack.com. You can visit me everywhere for everything at superjews.com. Every link you could ever want is there at superjews.com. I will be back next week. Thank you for tuning in.